this, and I gotta have this. What's that? I need this. Before long, I realized that I'm working to pay for something that I'm not going to have in the end anyway. So then we consider that, overlap that with friendships and relationships. How much time and energy do we invest in? You have your good friends, and then you have your not so good friends, and then you have your acquaintances and all that. And the thing is that how much time do we spend in this world, and in reality, for what? I watch my grandchildren. They spend all this time on these videos, and people are getting paid these videos to do this thing. Kind of like getting paid, paying somebody to get hit in the head with a shot. That's another one. So I notice I substitute shovel for chair. But you don't get it. But my point is that when we start looking at what we're sowing into and what we're reaping, and if we take that from a spiritual journey, from a spiritual evolution, maybe said, what are you gaining? What are we gaining? So in other words, if we're not growing spiritually, it all comes down to this point. What do you do with this thing? So in other words, we want God to speak to us. God wants to speak to us. God says he has more desire to speak to you than you have to listen to him. And so the thing is that there's nothing more that a parent wants than to talk to their kids. Until their kids are stupid, then there's nothing more that parents want than for their kids to go away, because all they can do is what? What parent wants their kids, all that they do is come around and gripe about how bad their world is? Think about that. What parent would want that? We don't want it. But how many times when we contact God, we want to do what?
Same thing.
The same thing. We want to gripe to God about our life. God didn't make this mistake in your life. You made that mistake. God gave you godly principles, actually. He tried to teach you these things, but yet, actually, got to go do it her way. My dad used to say, go ahead and do it the way you want to do it. That's how you're going to do it anyway. That's my dad's way of saying, I ain't responsible. This is your journey. Walk down it. I'm tired of carrying you around. So when we consider sowing, we consider reaping. Overlay it with all these things. Because the thing is that, like last night, that's what I was sitting here last night, and it was kind of quiet. And all of a sudden I heard sowing and reaping. And the Bible says that what a man so shall he reap. But there is an interesting story in Luke 16, 1 through 12. Now, mind you, this teaches a greater and a more significant principle. And I'm going to read it to you. One of the things is that if this journey of sowing and reaping is where you got to figure out where in your life you're sowing and where you're reaping. So in other words, if you're reaping something, Carrie, in your life, what would that tell you? If you're reaping something, so in other words, Carrie, if you got something that is profiting you, okay? Do you ever question, why are things going good? So you say, well, why am I being blessed? Why is this thing working out this way? Why is this happening? The reason why you want to know why is that you would like to know what you did right? Because if you knew what you did right, like you make a recipe taste, you make it and it comes out great. Like I've told y'all, some of the best ribs I've ever had in my life was that man right there. Some of the best ribs I've ever had in my life. The problem is, he don't know how he made them. And I'll never have them ribs again.
Good luck.
They're gone.
That's on every meal with them.
Yeah. So the thing is that it's not repeatable results. The other side of it is, if we're looking at why our life or why things are going wrong, do y'all remember the point that I was telling y'all several months ago about where me and my painter wasn't even talking to each other. And I had to make the choice. Do I continue in this existence or do I seek peace? And remember, that's what we talked about. Blessed are the peacemakers. And it says, if it's possible, according to you, do all that you can do to get along with people. Why would you want to get along with people that you have to work with? Because you have to work with them. You got to be there. So maybe sometimes if we can consider, Cheryl, what is their perspective? So what I started doing the very things, because I knew that me being quiet and snubbing, whatever, was producing fruit. I was sowing what I was reaping. So somewhere along the lines, AJ, I had to grow up and realize as management, you can't be a baby. You got to be and my wife used to tell me she should be the bigger person. And that sucked. Because sometimes I don't want to be the bigger person. I don't want to be the adult in the room. Choking is a good remedy, in my opinion. Choking followed up with an elbow to the face. So, because honestly, I actually considered past week or so, choking and elbowing my boss in the face. Until Thursday, when my boss pulls one of his pistols out of the drawers and cocks it and shows it to his wife. And then it dawned on me, that's actually a true story. Because he lied. Go figure that one out. But the thing is that I'm thinking to myself, instantly my mind said, now what the crap would you have done if you grabbed him by his throat, held him to his face, and all of a sudden pulled his gun and shot you? He'd been justified. You would have got your full self shot for indulging your fantasies of beating this dude up. Maybe that's not a profitable way to go. Maybe I need to reevaluate this thing, because honestly, after I thought about this, now this happened like a day or two later after all this, my mind is going on all these things. I'm thinking, well, maybe beating him up is not the best option. So I probably won't beat him up.
Let harm do.
Yeah. So the thing is that I've learned and I'm evolving. But ever since I made the decision to sow peace for my part amongst those that I'm around, the parent and I can work around each other. We have a peaceable day. Understand something. I understand completely, Carrie, that he is not my friend. He's not somebody that I want to spend any measure of time around other than what I have to work around.
But it took you to start.
Exactly. I had to make the decision to sow into that what I expected to get from that. And again, I am not seeking his friendship. I'm seeking the ability to work and to communicate on an adult level, and the rest of it, leave it alone. Because I'm only sowing to this right here. Now, let's go to Luke 16, verse 1. It says, and another time he said to his disciples, there was a certain man of great wealth who had a servant, and it was said to him that his servant was wasting his goods. And he sent for him and said, what is this which is said about you? Give me an account for all you have done. Now, wait a second. Do you realize the biblical principle that's just illustrated right there? Which I'll be honest with you. I was sitting here this morning. So, I'm sitting here this morning, and naturally I have my mind kind of wrapped around what was given to me this morning and what unfolded this morning with us and all these things. And all of a sudden, I'm sitting here and I'm kind of at that lull spot. What do we do with the lull spots in our life? What do we instantly do with the lull spots in our life? Grab the phone. Be absorbed somewhere else. My mind was thinking, well, I need to get because I'm thinking about how I want to process this meat and where I want to go with it and all the different things I want to make. So my mind is thinking about all the little supplies that I need, the little small things that I need to get everything organized. And I'm thinking about that, and all of a sudden I stop myself. I said, no, wait a second. This time's God's. This time is God's. So I blocked everything else out. I set it on, and I started back reading something. And I'm reading through this whole thing. I never caught what was just said. I never caught what was just said until just then. I'm going to read it again. There was a certain man of great wealth who had a servant, and it was said to him that his servant was wasting his goods. And he sent for him and said, what is this which is said about you? Give me an account for all you have done. Do y'all recognize that?
The servant must give an account.
We catch that, but you realize what story that is telling.
What you do with your life?
Think further. Think deeply. I've always been accused of this, and I will always be accused of this. This illustrates the spiritual thing that's happening. Because Satan is called the what? The accuser of brethren. He stands before the throne giving what? Accusations against us. So the thing is that he's watching our lives. Satan watches our lives, Michael. And so what happens? He goes before the Father. Think about it. He said, have you considered your servant Job? That's what's going on in the spiritual realm. All of a sudden he says, well, Michael had been given all these gifts. He said, look at all his drawings, look at all these paintings that he does, all this artwork that he does. And he says, what has he done with it? So all of a sudden God calls you up and he says, okay, Amber, I've given you all this stuff. He says, this is what's been accused. You've been accused of this thing. Remember a few weeks ago we said that if you was on trial and you had to prove your Christianity in a court of law, do you have enough to convict you? So basically this is what's happened. This whole conviction thing is enough. Do you have enough to convict you? And do you have enough proof to offset what the enemy has said about you? And he says, give an account. And he says, for you will no longer be the manager of my property. So in other words, if this is a whole spiritual thing, God is trying to communicate to you. He's trying to get you to go to a certain point. We understand why sometimes we feel like we've been diminished. We feel like things have happened. We've been set back. We've been set back and we've been diminished. We've not grown spiritually because what God gave us, Kai, we didn't do anything with it. Because that's not what we wanted.
Great mercy, use it for the wrong reason.
There you go. So the thing is that we've laid these things off. We don't want to mess with it. We don't want to deal with these things. But you realize this principle right there was telling us. So this first statement that's said right there is basically that the enemy is sitting there and accusing us. And so now the guy's like, oh, I'm falling short. The Bible says to judge yourself, that you would not have to be judged. Problem is, the guy did not judge himself. He did not consider what he was doing. This guy, so in other words, if we figure this out then, if we understand that, think about this thing, Lance, every day our life is being used to either prove our faith or disprove our misuse of what God's given us. We can prove that we are faithful, that we're good servants every day. Or we can prove that we're not. Because according to this, we're being judged by everything. Remember the verse in the Bible that says, since we're surrounded by such a cloud of witnesses? In other words, do everything, do all things as unto Christ. So this is what's being laid out. All these things are being laid out clearly for us. It says we're under a microscope. This guy was under a microscope, and he was not managing properly. But the problem is that where he was at is where we're at right now. This is why this story is so relevant even at this very moment. Because he says, you are getting ready to get fired. Now imagine how nice it would be, think about this, AJ, if you knew that you're getting ready to get fired. You knew that if you're like any of the rest of us, you probably not, but most of us, we live from last paycheck to last paycheck. We're not even at this paycheck yet. We're still like at least 2 to 3 paychecks behind. I don't know about the rest of you.
I'm at the handle with that.
Huh?
I'm at the handle with it.
Yeah. So the thing is that if you ask yourself this question, you think about this thing. When we leave a job, they want to what? 2-week notice, right?
Yeah.
But if we're fired, they don't give us a 2-week notice. God has given us a 2-week notice. He gave this guy a notice. Because he didn't fire the guy instantly. He demoted him instantly, but he did not fire him. How do you know he did not fire him? Consider the next verses. And he sent for him and said, blah, blah, blah. He says, and the servant said to himself, this is what he said. He said, self, what am I to do now that my Lord takes away my position? I have not enough strength for working in the field because I retired and I don't want to work no more. Yes. And I would be shamed if I had to go around and beg for money for people in the street. So the guy's thinking, man, what the crap am I going to do? I done got soft, fat, and lazy, and my pride ain't going to let me beg. I remember one time when I left Landers, and I remember our business was going out of business and all this stuff and was losing everything. And I said, I went outside and I sit on the trailer. And I said, God, what do I got to do? What do I have to do to get my family back to this point? And this guy pulls up, who is my nemesis at my place. Now this is Benton, I'm in Greenbrier. And this guy just happens to be going through there right when I'm sitting out on the trailer praying. Duh. No. And he pulls up there and he says, man, what are you doing, Money?